I rise to add another voice in opposition to this bill on behalf of the Green Party. We are not supporting this bill because we have a sense of justice and a belief in human rights, and we believe that victims' rights are absolutely critical, regardless of whether they are in or out of prison. I would also just like to remind this House, as many others have before me, of the intended review that has never happened, that if this government truly was interested in victims' rights, then that review would have happened. And we would have had legislation that evolved out of a review that was evidence-based and considered the actual needs of victims and what would make a difference to them. And this legislation does nothing towards actually addressing the needs of victims. We've heard about the gaps in terms of white-collar crime and recompense to victims. That's points been made very eloquently, I think, by my Labour colleagues. But I would also like to draw this to the attention of this House, the work that was shelved by this government into the inadequacy of our system in addressing the needs of victims of sexual abuse in this country. There was a huge review done by the Law Commission on pre-trial, looking at alternative pre-trial and trial processes to improve the ability of sexual abuse victims to get justice in our courts. Because we have a system that denies justice to about 99% of sexual abuse victims in this country. And this government, after months and decades, in fact, of work on that issue, just decided to shelve it because it's not a priority, because some of the ideas in that review were contentious. Not many of them, a huge number of them, in fact, had agreement, but some of them were contentious, so this government shelved it. Now, where in that is any concern for the victim? It's a joke to put this forward in front of this House and pretend that this government cares about victims when the most major piece of work that would have helped improve justice for victims in this country was shelved with no adequate reason being given for it. Another reason that we are opposing this bill is actually the point I made earlier, that we see victims being able to be prisoners being able to be victims. It's a very basic principle. And that this bill will have the perverse result of making it less likely for prisoners to report torture and take away incentives for our correction systems to create the safe environments that would mean that this legislation was completely unnecessary. While New Zealanders may have a gut reaction to think this is unfair, that these people that may have done terrible things are now getting a payout for government, that train of thinking is focused on what happened to somebody outside of prison by this person, and is missing the situation of that prisoner having been victimised by our state. And the case that led to this was a case of extreme torture that was perpetuated by the state. And we know, and I'm very pleased to see the government now taking action in terms of helping to protect, hopefully, transgender prisoners in New Zealand who we know are being sexually abused in our prisons at the moment. The state has a duty to protect prisoners. That is a basic part of human rights. And we know we're not going to have safer communities if we have prisoners who feel that they are in turn being victimised by the state. That is not going to lead to them feeling as if they have something to contribute to our society and something to give back to the community if they are alienated through the rehabilitative process. So there are many reasons the Greens are opposing this bill, and at heart it's because we care about victims.
The Honourable Tauhanari.
Mr. Speaker, just a very quick call. Sorry.